Razabani for IFO TV, proudly sponsored by Everlast. I'm delighted to have with me, all the way from Las Vegas, Nevada, my man, Coach Larry Wade. Coach, we've been trying to do this for many months, many months.
Yes, we have.
It's not
Yes,
normally
we
this
have.
hard. It's not normally this hard,
No.
but we finally got it today.
Yeah. First of all, let me tell you, thank you for having me. I'm grateful to be here. Yes, we've been trying to link up and get this interview done. I've had a very, very busy schedule along with yourself, and this being the spring, and me also being a college coach for track and field. That's our season, so we're traveling every week, and at the same time, me being a professional boxing trainer, we're having fights and being in camp every week for the last 4 months. So it's been a really busy time, but I have more time now. Most of my fights are finished. I got one or two more coming down the line, but I'm grateful that we were able to get it done now.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Before we start, how are things? How's the family? How's everybody? How's COVID-19 in America? Has everything started to calm down a bit now?
Family's good. I'm starting to try to spend more time with the family. I've been really busy. My career is very demanding, so a lot of times I'm on the road. A lot of times I'm in the gym, or out on the track, or at the pool. But it's definitely, they're definitely doing great. Health is good. COVID is not gone by any means. Sorry about that. COVID is not gone by any means, but we are definitely trying to calm down a little bit emotionally. I think the biggest issue, not just in the US, but all over the world, is being able to transition back into normal life. I think that we've been semi-conditioned now to not be close to people and interact with people. So we have to learn how to do that all over again, but in a way so that everybody can be functional. So I think that's what the biggest challenge is in the US, but things are definitely getting better.
Coach, I want to start on a negative. Don't mean to start on a negative, but I'll start on the negative. Obviously, Badou was training immensely hard for this rematch with John Pascal. Obviously, the first fight, which was Badou, obviously thought he won, was given to obviously John Pascal. And I know how much he wanted this fight. I interviewed Badou a number of times last year, and he was like, "That's the fight I want. I want to right the wrong." He's had draws in the past, Adonis Stevenson, James DeGale. But he goes, "This is the one that I want because I truly believe I won the fight." When you got the news that he had failed his drug test, what was your immediate reaction?
It was awkward because I was at home actually with my family in Texas for a short period of time. I was there only for 2 days. I had actually a little longer than 2 days, but I was on my last 2 days of the visit. And Amir calls me and said, "We need a Zoom call." And he had a high sense of urgency. I didn't know what that was about. And I was like, "Well, I'm with my family." He said, "I need you to answer this call. You have to be on this Zoom call now." And I'm like, okay. He's never like that. So for him to have such a high level of urgency, I knew it was something. And so when he told me on the phone, the whole team kind of just was quiet because I think we were waiting on Badou's response to see how he was going to respond to it. But of course he was disappointed. But with it being him, we didn't want our emotions to be in the front. We wanted to still follow Badou in regards to his movement and his emotions, but we're there to support him. And so, but we were disappointed, but at that same time, we wanted to not overshadow his position because it was his fight and this was his opportunity to get back. And so we were a little bit disappointed, but we had to refocus. All we focused on was like, what, it doesn't matter. He's in front. We put all this hard work. We had a really good camp. This is probably one of the best camps we've ever had with Badou Jack. Especially with Coach Banks being in place now. We really had a good camp. And so we didn't want to throw that away. We was like, whatever, we all know we worked really hard for this. So whoever they put in front of us, if we get to continue on with a fight, that's the person who's going to have to pay. And that's the way we looked at it.
We've had this many times in the past where we've had fighters test positive for certain substances. Some may get 6-month ban, some may get 12-month ban, some get away with it. But they continue to participate in the sport. I can't remember on top of my head someone who was indefinitely banned from the sport of boxing. But obviously, it's come out a number of weeks later that he failed a fourth kind of, well, he was caught with a fourth different steroid, which was injectable and not done orally, which means he either knew what was going into his body or he allowed somebody to put something in his body which he didn't know. But
right.
what, and I'm not just talking about John Pascal here, but how do we deal with this? How do we deal with cheaters and people taking illegal substances to have advantage?
You know, boxing is a totally different sport because unlike football, basketball, track, soccer, boxing, you have to lose your life. You know, you're in a ring, a person can lose their life. You're not going to lose your life playing basketball or cause somebody else to lose their life, which is the bigger thing in these sports. So I think what's going to have to happen is they're going to have to start putting some hard lines in the sand, just simply because to try to prevent people from wanting to do it. And in a sport where there's so much contact at a high level, we're already still getting anywhere between 5 to 10 deaths every year, regardless of that, based on boxing, that we need to make sure we understand that it's not just your life you're affecting, but it's the life of another person, and taking them away from their children. I think it should stand more than anything else. So I think they just have to put some lines in the sand so people understand. And then once they start to do that, I'm pretty sure they start discouraging people from doing it.
I know Badou was training throughout, obviously, Ramadan. So that was tough as it was. So he definitely wanted to make sure that training camp didn't go to waste. Leonard and the team managed to pull in an opponent. Obviously, it was such short notice. We weren't expecting a big name, etc. But was it good for Badou just to get that frustration out and just fight and make sure he did fight on that night?
Oh, absolutely. You know, Badou has a story, and people are not going to know it because he's not one of those guys to complain. But when Badou lost to Pascal, he was really disappointed. Like, he was like very disappointed, to the point where he didn't know if he was going to continue to box, because he was like, Coach, I did everything I could. I beat this guy, you know, and they still won't give me the win. He says, so he's at the point where he's like, I don't know what else to do now. What more do I have to do? Right. And I understand that frustration. So they didn't see him mentally be upset. They didn't see him mentally be discouraged and have to dig himself out of that emotional hole. No one was around for that but the team. So he had to go through something mentally to rebuild himself, to get back to saying, hey, I'm going to go back to the sport, 1. 2, I'm going to go back to the sport, not just to exist, but to actually be the best again. And I'm going to give this one more shot. For as many times as people know Badou has got the draw, and people say, oh, he should have won that fight, that can get frustrating and that can be very, very discouraging. So for him to go through that transition or that metamorphosis back into the gladiator he is today was a process. So we had to put someone in front of him, because this would just been one more opportunity where it's like a slap in the face. He's doing everything right. He got nutritionists that live with him. He go to bed early at night. He's drinking water all day, training hard in the gym, training hard in the boxing gym, training hard in the strength conditioning gym. He's doing everything he's supposed to do. And sometimes when you're doing everything right, you start to question yourself, why? Because I'm still getting the short end of the stick. So no, it was very great for him to be able to have that opportunity. And if you watched him fight, you saw a different Badou Jack. He was fast. He was throwing a lot of punches. He would walk the guy down, chasing him, and it was a good fight. You know, the guy was definitely saw after the first round that he was not trying to be there anymore. You're like, nah, this hurts. This is too much. And he got in survival mode. And when a person gets in survival mode, it actually makes the fight harder, opposed to a guy standing in front of him and exchanging. So for Badou, he did what he needed to do to win the fight, and that's all we can do.
You said he had the best camp, one of the best camps ever.
Yes.
He's not getting any younger. He's 36, 37. I know he's extremely dedicated to the sport of boxing, but where does his future lie? Is it like heavy cruiserweight? Could he go up to cruiserweight easy? Where do you think he's gonna move for the final big fights towards the end of his career?
Well, I think Badou wants to go to cruiser, and the main reason he wants to go to cruiser because he wants to win another world title at the cruiserweight. He wants to be a 3-division world champion. The only reason that Badou's even at light heavy was because of the Pacquiao fight initially. Before the very first Pacquiao fight, he was already moving to cruiser. We had all decided we're going to cruiser, and that's the case. And then the Pacquiao fight happened. And it was like, yeah, let's go get it. And so we went after it. And then he was like, okay, I want to go to cruiser again, but we kept getting guaranteed that Pacquiao fight would happen. So we stayed at light heavy to be able to get that fight. But now that Pacquiao's off, the title's off the table, now it's like, you know what? He's going to go ahead and move forward with what he said he wants to do. We talk about 2.5 years of him preparing for one opportunity. And he's like, yeah, I'm tired of waiting. I'm not going to go stay here any longer. I'm going to move up to cruiser, which is, I think, a great idea. He's done really well. And as far as his age is concerned, let me tell you, Badou's body is really in his 20s. He takes great care of himself. And he's still very, very strong, still very, very fit. And aerobically, out of every boxer I've trained, his aerobic system is probably the best as far as performance and recovery is concerned. So it's not really showing in his work. Now, like every other athlete that's a little older, they need a little more rest. So maybe you add one more day's rest to what we do. But from a performance standpoint, from a strength standpoint, from a power standpoint, he has gotten better. And most people aren't going to know this, but we were in sparring, and I was just looking at a punch count just the other day. We've had 8-round sparring and 10-round sparrings. We had at least 5, if not 6 rounds with over 100 punches at 175, which is huge. So he has been averaging around 75 to 110 punches per round in all our sparring. And that's even hard for a welterweight. That's hard for anybody. So for a guy that's 175 pounds to do it, that's a huge testament to how his body's still able to do it at the highest level.
Wow. So we'll look forward to some obviously news of Badou, I'm sure, in the next couple of months. Larry, another man that you work with, it looks like the fight is potentially going to be made. Canelo-Plant and Canelo. I spoke to Caleb a month ago, and he said, look, that's the fight I want. He's left it with me and Al to deal with Eddie DAZN, find out how we can make this fight. How tough is this fight for Caleb?
I think the fight, I'm laughing because what I really want to say, people probably won't respect what I have to say, but I mean, it's going to be a challenge for him. It's going to be a challenge like any other challenge he's had. I don't think it's any more of a challenge. I think that Canelo is a great fighter, but I also feel like most of the guys who get in the ring with Canelo are afraid of him. They're afraid of the idea and the image and the legend of who Canelo is supposed to be. They make him more than a human. Well, I don't have that problem with Caleb. Caleb looks at him like a man, and he's going to stand in front of him like a man. He said he could hurt just like me. And so Caleb's mindset is totally different. So if you got a guy who's not afraid to come in there and stand in front of you and has the skill set that Caleb has, it's going to be a long night. It ain't going to be the fight that everybody thinks it's going to be. Not to take anything away from Canelo because he's a great fighter, but I really do feel like they're sincerely overlooking who Canelo-Plant really is. And I'm not talking about just the boxer Canelo-Plant. I'm not talking about just the husband Canelo-Plant is. I'm talking about the Canelo-Plant who's had to go through series and levels of extreme disappointment, extreme stress to be able to elevate himself to the man that he is now from a character standpoint. You telling me this young man have as many I ain't gonna say downfall, but have many disappointments as he's had with losing his child, winning his first world title and losing his mother like less than 2 months after that, living through that and having to get back in the ring and let his hands go. This man has been through so much in his life, even coming up, growing up as a kid in the area that he grew up in and some of the things he had to do and being one of the few white boxers out there and even getting challenged and picked on because of that, his whole career all the way up to becoming the man who he is today. It's not a situation where you're going to have a guy in front of you who is afraid of you. He's been through too much. You don't offer anything that he ain't already dealt with in some way. You cannot give this man more pain than he's already had to endure. You bring nothing else to the table outside of I can box. Well, you know what? Caleb can too.
When Canelo went into the ring against Callum Smith in December, everyone said this was going to be one of his toughest challenges. Is Callum's a big 168. He's got a big reach over Canelo, and Canelo won convincingly. When he fought Billy Joe, everyone said Billy Joe possesses and brings something different, skill set, southpaw, etc. And Canelo generally won convincingly. And he's kind of dealt with different styles and different ways of opponents fighting him. What does Caleb bring other than his toughness that we know he has? But what does he bring different that Canelo hasn't seen before, or is there anything different?
You can't compare any of those guys to Caleb. None of those guys. Not one of those guys has Caleb's ability. Not one of them. They're not as fast as him. They're definitely not as strong as him. They're not as fit as he is. They definitely don't have the ring IQ or the boxing ability that Caleb has. I mean, here's the reality. If you try to compare Caleb to anyone, the only person that's, in my opinion, been in a ring with him that could even come close is Floyd. Because Floyd is an amazing boxer, a defensive specialist, and his hands are fast. Now, let's talk about that. Even right now, if I'm not mistaken, you can do the research, but I'm almost positive. They say Caleb has the #1 defense in his weight class, and maybe one of the top in the whole sport. First. Secondly, you haven't seen anyone whose hands have been as fast as Caleb's. We did one of those neuro tests on him to see his reaction, how fast his hands were. And they by far said he's outscored everybody that they've ever been in the ring with to score as far as the speed is concerned. And as an athlete, Caleb's amazing. He's amazing. He can do anything. I mean, he's in the sport of boxing. That's cool, but he played basketball, he played football, and he was great. He do it all. So you can guarantee you got a real athlete in front of you, a real man in front of you with a skill set that you haven't seen since Floyd, and that's the fight you lost. So you know this fight is going to give him difficulty. So at the end of the day, he can by no means be compared to any of the guys you just named. And I'm not taking anything away from him, but at the same time, like I've said earlier in this interview, I don't think they're giving Caleb the respect that he deserves. But that's okay. That's very okay because we're used to that. When he fought Uzataki, they said he wasn't going to make it past the 5th round. Well, that kind of changed, didn't it? We've been having to strap ever since, right? And so every person that the IBF has put in front of us for the mandatories, and even the fight we were able to get, like the Mike Lee fight, he has decimated them, destroyed them, made them look bad. Even in the previous fight he just had, with Caleb Truax. That was our mandatory. We had to take that fight. And it was a one-sided fight. You saw a guy who just could not keep up, and you saw Caleb just really handle him, even with one hand after half the fight, because he wasn't, one of the hands was actually really damaged, but he still beat him up bad. So I'm not concerned about that. I know when the time comes, Caleb has proven that he is a Showtime fighter. When the lights come on, as a matter of fact, the more people there, the brighter the lights, the more he loves it. He's not shy of being in the center. But that's the crazy part about that is that's Caleb as a boxer. He wants the lights. Outside of the ring, the opposite. He don't want to be in the lights. He's just kind of reserved. He don't want to be, look at me, look at me. He's just like, hey, Caleb, what's up? I don't have any jewelry on. It's okay. I can afford it, but I just don't want it. I don't have on all the Gucci stuff. I might have on my rocker shirt, T-shirt, and some very expensive Nike shoes, but he's not that guy. So you're dealing with a totally different guy. And some people talk it because they think they're supposed to. Some people live it because that's the only choice they have. And that's where he's at.
Because you want to move away from your fighters and just focus on the heavyweight division. You're one of the greatest strength and conditioners in the game. I saw a couple of months ago where Tyson Fury was up on the hills in Vegas with yourself, with Badou. Coach, he's a phenomenal of an athlete, a man that's 6'9", let alone running hills with you. But the way he moves in the ring, I don't think I've ever seen a heavyweight as big as him do. How does a man like that have those tools in his arsenal?
Listen, I had an opportunity to work with Tyson for like a week, right? He really, really, really impressed me. He's a phenomenon. And I say it in that way because he has this endomorph frame, right? Huge guy, over 250, like you said, 6'9". And a guy who has that type of body type isn't supposed to be able to do the same things that someone with an ectomorph or mesomorph frame should do, meaning a smaller guy. This guy is agile. He's elusive in the ring. When it comes down to his fitness, he is running those hills 5 miles uphill in 8,000, feet altitude, just like anyone else at any lower weight. And he's talking and laughing and joking the whole way up the hill, right? So he is a phenomenon because most people don't have it like that. Most people are not gifted like that. He's unique in that way, which makes sense why he is, a world champion at this point. He is a great talent, and mentally, he loves to push himself. He likes to push everyone else around him because he's going back and getting people that were falling off and bringing them back up to the front, and he's joking and laughing. And when I'm paying attention to him, I said, this is why this guy's a world champion. And even as a person, he was very, very cool, joking, laughing, things of that nature. But he has a lot of characteristics that make him unique. So I understand why he's been able to go as far as he's gotten in this sport, especially in the division in which he's in.
He's obviously having this trilogy fight with Deontay Wilder. The first fight, everyone thought that Tyson Fury won on point. Second one, he convincingly won. Is this going to be any different? I know Deontay's brought in Malik Scott, who's an encyclopedia when it comes to boxing IQ. But is this fight going to be any different? Can Deontay Wilder do something different to beat Tyson Fury?
Sure. I mean, anybody can change. Anybody can develop, and he's had more than enough time to do it. It feels like 2-3 months, maybe not, but he's been trying to create and stimulate change in his life and his camp for over a year now. So sure, he can get better. What it really boils down to is, what is your first reaction once you get touched? Do you go to your fundamentals, or do you go to this wild man, let me swing wide and hopefully I connect, right? But I think anybody can get better. I think it's going to be a great fight. I think Tyson is very, very confident that he's winning this fight. He was like, whatever, let's fight right now. He didn't care, but it's going to be a good fight. I think it's going to be entertaining. And I think that I'm going to definitely tune in to watch it for sure.
We started off this interview talking about Badou Jack and he having the best training camp, and he's looking unbelievable for his age. A man that is known as the 8 division champion of boxing, the only 8 division champion in boxing, doesn't seem to go away. The only man that has fought he will fight in 4 different decades, Manny Pacquiao.
Yes.
Again,
yes.
He's not fighting, a up and coming welterweight. He's fighting probably the best welterweight in Errol Spence. How does a man like Manny, 42, 43 years of age, how does he do it?
We all have our demons, right? That's what I call it. We all have our demons. My personal demon is I expect everyone that I work with to be great. And anything less than that is not acceptable for me. So I push, I press, I prod, I do the things I need to do to get them to that point, right? And that's the responsibility that I carry, the burden I carry for myself, because if I'm being connected to you, I want you to be the best of what you do. And I can't sleep, rest unless I'm able to do that. Some people's burden is constantly challenging themselves. Can I do it again? Let me question it. And the moment you start to question, then you erase that, because now you got to go do it, right? And I think for him, Manny doesn't need the money. He doesn't need to prove to anyone that he's one of the best ever in the sport. Manny is doing this for Manny. Not about anything other than just saying, let me go to a bigger challenge, because out of all the people he picked one of the hardest guys. Why? Because he wants to see for himself, is this guy really as hard as people say they are, and can I live up to the challenge? So that is his cross to bear, for lack of words. So you're going to always, as long as he's physically able to do it, he's not going to give up the sport until he just totally realizes at some point, I'm no longer able to do it at the level I want to do it at. And the last time I got in the ring with a guy like that, Keith Thurman, I put him down and I destroyed him. So he hasn't had a situation where he really had to say, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. He's still putting them away.
Would it surprise you if he beats Errol?
Yes, it would. And the only reason it would surprise me is because Errol has shown me that he has good ring IQ as well, and that he can adapt to styles. I do feel like he hasn't been in a ring with a guy like Manny. The closest thing he's ever had is Sean Porter. And we saw how that worked out for him and Sean. That could have easily been a draw. And if Sean didn't get clipped in the 11th round, it could have easily been a win. It definitely was a fight of the year. But that speed, that agility has shown that it could give Errol problems. So I'm excited to see how it unfolds, because I only know one style Manny can come at, and it's very unorthodox. It's like awkward angles. So we're going to definitely see how that works out. But I think it's going to be a really good fight. But I would be surprised if Manny won.
Absolutely. We look forward to it. I'm super excited for that fight. So that's probably... I know
there's some good fights this summer. There are a lot of good fights. Yeah. A lot of good fights this summer.
No, absolutely. Obviously, Deontay Wilder Fury is a big fight next month. But personally, I think that Pacquiao Errol Spence, it's just an interesting fight to see how much Pacquiao has got left in him. And if he beats Errol, what that says about his legacy, you know, how great is his legacy beating the prime fighter in today's generation?
I want you to think about what you just said, because in that one statement is what the whole entire world, in my opinion, is looking at. They're not saying, we want to see Errol knock Manny out. They're saying, we want to see if Manny can beat him. So even though Errol has the belts and has been considered one of the top welters, we're still giving the light and the attention to Manny Pacquiao. So that just goes to show you as a testament of what kind of superstar he is in the sport, and how we are trying to create the narrative ourselves based on what we want to see, right? So I'm excited for that same reason. We want to see if he can do it. We're not saying, hey, he's gonna knock him out. That's what we want to get knocked out. We're saying, hey, we want to see if he can win that fight, right? So that excites me.
No, absolutely. Coach, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for giving me 30 odd minutes of your time today.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you so much. Hopefully, for all those who are watching this, please continue to tune in. He's one of the best there is. Raz has been a supporter of me and the sport for a long time. Hey, please continue to support the sport. It's an amazing sport. I give my all to it every day, and so do these boxers. We love and appreciate all you do in supporting us. Just make sure you try to tune in as many of those fights as you can, even the pay-per-view ones, so we can keep it going the way it is. Thank you guys for everything. I appreciate the interview.
Thank you, Coach. Always a pleasure. And we'll definitely catch up with you soon. Coach Larry Wade, IFL TV, thank you very much.